Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to talk about my views on the youth and the failure of governance as regards to Nigeria's youth population. The youth demographic represents a huge resource for most countries because most of the economic power in any country is undertaken by younger people, the ages of 18 to about 50, because that's when most people work. In Nigeria, more than half of our population is below the age of 50. And I would like to use that to say that, are we a true democracy if the power is not concentrated in the hands of our biggest demographic? Youth unemployment in Nigeria currently stands at about 40%, and unemployment in the country as a whole is about 25%. This is not factoring in the amount of underemployment there is in the country. For example, people who have graduate degrees who are working like secretarial jobs or menial jobs. And that represents like an additional value lost because this is someone who has been trained to add X amount of value to the economy that now cannot do so. And any government seeking to propel the country forward needs to really think about, our youth population and how best to support us. First of all, in our leadership, young people are not represented at all. There is a bill actually that is seeking to reduce the age of qualification for president from 40 to 30 years, government from 35 to 30, etc. And I think this is a valid bill to consider in the future of the country. Because like I said, if you have a geriatric population making decisions for a country that's in a different demographic, first of all, a lot of their ideas will simply not translate because they may not be as attuned to the needs of the people of that younger demographic. Financially as well, the youth are excluded from a lot of Nigeria's economic goings on. On the occasion of our independence, the CBN announced a new fund, the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund. And we have to look at this closely because on one hand, it looks amazing, wonderful investment in the youth 18 to 35. But then you look at the numbers, 25 billion naira per year for 3 years. We have just spoken about the allowances given to the members of our judiciary and our executive arms of government. And the same government is proposing 25 billion naira across all the youth per year. That's not a big number at all. And when we consider the power that the naira has compared to foreign currency, the number becomes even less. When you consider the fact that the fuel subsidy has been lifted, the number falls even further. And when you consider the number of youths who actually have the training and the skills that will enable them to access this funding, the number drops even further. This plan has been said it would go on for 3 years. Let us hope that it goes on for those 3 years, but also ask what happens after those 3 years. The government is not making long-term plans. We have two major political parties that are failing to reach bipartisan agreements that ignore political loyalties and think about the future of the country. Even in countries such as America, where there's a lot of political instability, on some key infrastructural issues, the two parties are able to come together for some sort of resolution to keep the country running while they fight their political battles. However, that is not the case in Nigeria, and the youth suffer very greatly for this. I'll talk about education. In all of these funding opportunities, they're useless if people cannot use them, and people cannot use them if they are not educated. There are uncountable institutions from the primary to the tertiary level that are supported by our various local, state, and federal government bodies. But I mean, any of us, I can ask to point to one institution, whether a nursery school or a university or a polytechnic in Nigeria that is run by any government arm that can compete on any kind of world scale. And that is something that tells you about the investment that the country is making into its people. And I'm not just talking about schools, even things like apprenticeship programs, vocational training schemes, those things also, anything that contributes skill development and skill acquisition for the youth needs to be invested in for those youth to be able to build the country and for those youth to feel like they owe the country something. And so we need to think about, yes, the amount of skills development and skills acquisition programs that exist in the country for motivated young people who may not have been born into, say, like a financially well-off family. Our youths in Nigeria are currently thriving, not because of Nigeria, but in spite of Nigeria. In 2019, Nigeria became the 4th leading country of new immigrants to Canada, with about 12,500 Nigerians gaining permanent residence in Canada. That shows us that all the people who are qualified to get jobs in this country are abandoning ship at the first opportunity that they can. In the UK currently, there are 7,967 doctors who qualified in Nigeria. That is not counting the number of Nigerians who, like myself, are training here or have trained here and will stay here. So even in terms of healthcare, which like Dr. Eke talked about, apart from the problems posed by lack of funding in his institution in terms of the actual budget on the citizens, there's also that massive drain of resources in terms of the actual doctors, not counting nurses and other support workers that, you know, bolster up the healthcare system. And that's just one sector of the Nigerian economy. I don't need to tell the people on this call about the vast number of Nigerians in the diaspora, because many of us fall into that class, or at least have close family and friends in that class. And that is not counting the trauma actually that is inflicted upon young Nigerians of having to grow up away from home and having to deal with having our family members spread out across the globe in the search for a better life. And that actually dilutes the sense of national unity. It causes people to revert to associations based on tribe rather than based on country, as we try to form kinship in these new countries. And we see this across the board in politics, in finance, in sports. All of the best Nigerian sports people play in teams for other countries because the country has not provided financing for them to perform at the top of their game. And even when they do perform, they are not recognized, they are not supported, they're not given a pension. The head of the statistics office tweeted about the increased rise in unemployment for the youth. And it's interesting because Nigeria has a huge failing civil service and a huge unemployed youth population. And I think, to me, it makes sense that that is a match that is waiting to happen. But for whatever reason, that has not been implemented and doesn't look like it will be implemented soon. And I cannot pretend that I know the answers to these problems. But I also cannot pretend that the problems don't exist, because I'm a young Nigerian and I, for one, would like to move back home, but I would also like to live a life where I earn a livable salary. And I don't know how possible that is in the current Nigeria. And I'm sure many young people are having similar thoughts. Like Mr. Adeoye said, there needs to be reckoning by the diaspora, because we cannot have our cake and eat it. So we actually do need to think about how much we're willing to commit to Nigeria, any sacrifices we might be willing or able to make in the pursuit of a better country. Some of these measures might seem drastic, but I will end with this saying that there was a woman who didn't want to start a 4-year degree at 30 because she didn't want to graduate at 34. Well, she didn't do the degree, and 4 years later, she was still 34 and she didn't have the degree. So in thinking about some of the solutions that might feel drastic or far away, the time will continue to go on regardless of when and if we start. So we might as well start now. And for those people here who have young children around them or youths, talk to your children, to your nieces, your nephews, ask them what they need, ask them what they want, ask them what would motivate them to stay in the country, to work in the country, to work for the country, and take those inputs in when tailoring a future vision for Nigeria. Thank you.